welcome everybody to another episode of Hot Program. I am your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast. And as always, good people, I am in airplane mode. And now a man who does not believe God created the world in 6 days and also did not create an introduction for this show in 6 days, a man who needs no introduction. How are you doing today, my one buck friend?
I'm pretty well. Thank you so much. And yourself?
I'm good. Good to see you.
Good seeing you too.
So today we are going to be talking about the dark world of megachurches, which is kind of interesting because it seems like on face value when you read the Bible, like a megachurch shouldn't even be a thing. Churches were small, Jesus's people were not known to be wealthy and rich, and we think of him mostly as like an itinerant preacher. But mega churches seem to be, a sign of the times. And the thing I was thinking about is interesting is there is this insane world of mega churches, but I think it's bleeding over. I think if you look at conservative politics, I was watching Trump over the weekend. He did a double header, two keynote speeches in the same day. It was exactly the same feel as a mega church. It felt like
they started to play the music now. They got the music going when he's talking now.
yeah, they got the music
Yeah.
going. There was the promises of prosperity and everything's great. Of course, the villainization of people who are different than they are. You had the sort of lead up and the hype. I remember at one point Trump just stood there on stage when he came out, like, where people are just supposed to be admiring him and adoring him, and he's just kind of standing there. But it felt exactly like being in a church service, and I do recall that was one of the moments. I kind of don't like when they talk about the cult of Trump, but I was like, yeah, no, it's definitely a cult. I guess what I don't like is that they won't tie it as explicitly to the cult of Christianity as I'd like. Like it's not just random people who are in this Trump cult. It's mostly people who are predisposed to this sort of community because they grew up in church. But that feels like what Trump has been able to do. He's been able to take this mega church thing, take the gospel of prosperity, and put sort of a Americana spin on it, and create the mega church of MAGA.
The megachurch. Megachurch. Well, I'm going to disagree with the megachurch sort of philosophy. I think the Bible definitely is leaning towards a megachurch
Really?
philosophy. Oh yeah, because you're supposed to go forth and spread the gospel and all that stuff. What you're not supposed to do is be hypocritical, which we see in mega churches. In mega churches, we see the hypocrisy. We see them not giving where they could, right? Because essentially, you shouldn't have the big building, maybe that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Uh, Maybe you should meet in a field where you can, or rent space if it's cheaper than owning, because that way you can do more work in the community and focus on making the world a better place by bringing more people to Christ. But no, it's let me pull up in my Range Rover when you're the minister, and it's let me have a $3 million house or an $8 million house. As we see, if we really take a look at a lot of these mega church pastors, we did it last week with airplanes. It sure seems like they're trying to outdo each other. Maybe that wasn't last week, but it sure seems like they're trying to outdo each other, right? Like it's a contest of some kind,
Yes.
which neither the God of the Bible nor the Jesus of the Bible would approve of. The idea is not to store up your treasures on
On
earth,
earth, yeah.
where where they will
Or the
rot and
spoiled.
rust.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, supposed to store up treasures in heaven. And that is a coupon you will never redeem. But hey, you should try it.
Yeah.
Nothing in that account.
It's also sad though, because you're right. I mean, these churches tend to not only be filled with wealth, but focused on the wealthy. And there's so
Mm-hmm.
much to me that they don't do, because they're really just building up the kingdom hall. They're really just building up the building. They're building up their ministry. And to the extent that they are concerned with, quote unquote, making the world a better place, I think that is just coded language in their world for evangelism, right? Make the world a better place means get your friends and family to come to church with you and spread the gospel. It unfortunately, even though the gospel would tell us it should be things like feed the hungry, visit those who are in prison, we've been talking about,
Or the
clothe the
sick.
naked, visit the sick, yeah, all of this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're doing that so much these days. And uh, there are a lot of charitable believers, but I think that that's on an individual basis. And I still want to see this data. I don't know if anybody has it. You know, that's one of the myths we have, I think, of science or research, is that, you know, just because we might want some data doesn't mean that it's actually out there. But I would love to see what proportion of a believer's charitable efforts, via volunteering time, donating money, whatever else we might think of, you know, donating, whatever it is that's considered a charitable activity, how much of that goes towards the church. And my thinking with that is, I know that's how I felt as a Christian, right? Like I remember literally one time, like, emptying my wallet out in a collection plate. Like, here, Jesus, take what I have. I tend to do that when I donate. I
Mm-hmm.
saw, you know, if I, you know, I don't care. It's not like I got a ton of cash on me or anything like that. But there are those times where I'm like, you know, this is what I can give. I'll give what I have, right? And it's like I
Mm-hmm.
have what's in my pocket at the time. You know, there was so many times where that really satisfied me. That made me feel like I was doing a lot of good in the world. But now when I look back, I'm like, man, I was probably just building up the church. And so I think probably a lot of people feel that way. And it would just be interesting, because I really do think that we'd be more charitable sort of without churches. Like we would,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you'd have to give that to nonprofits. People would, you know, actually donate their time to organizations that, you know, aren't trying to proselytize people. So I don't know. I'd just be interested in seeing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to know myself. I did some volunteer stuff when I was there, but my commitment time was really low. Just really maybe 2.5, 3 hours a week. That's it. Sometimes maybe five. Which, when you consider how long a week is a lot. And yeah, I have to work and get sleep and all that stuff. But I don't think 5 to 10 hours is much of a commitment. Getting back to Trump, if I may, for a moment, did you see the clip of him sort of saying he beat Obama in the election? Did you see that clip at all?
No, no.
Oh my gosh. Now, Joe Biden takes a lot of flack for doing something we all do, right? We all misspeak. We all use the wrong words. We all stammer. We all stumble. And we all try to search for the right thing to say. Like, oh, what's the right
Right.
thing to say in this moment? Well, Trump, I mean, I worry about the guy. I know McConnell has his there's something going on there that's rather serious, I think, with Mitch McConnell. And I've been there. I got the scars. I can show you the scars. Um,
Damn.
you can have serious things wrong with you. You know, so to me, it's not funny when these things happen. But you might want to play that for our audience and yourself. Do a search on YouTube. Trump. I don't even know. Freezes, stammers. Trump says he beat Obama. There's somebody's playing a clip of that thing on YouTube. And it was astonishing because of how long it lasted. This was maybe 20 or so seconds. He's just rambling like, wait, dude, this is worrying. I'm not a Trump voter, and I'll never be a Trump voter unless I'm on the jury. Well, I won't be after I said that, will I? I haven't seen all the evidence. It would be improper for me to make up my mind. So just like I'm telling you to seek out this clip so you could maybe play it for our audience here. But it is rather concerning. I certainly don't like to see anybody sick. I know a lot of elderly people. I was just helping my neighbor across the street yesterday who has been sick all week, you know. But yeah, you might want to play that Pocket Locker because
I'll start this I'll see if I can find it.
Okay, he's the high priest of MAGA.
He is the high priest of MAGA, and it's funny how many of them will say that. They'll say that he's right there with Jesus or just under Jesus, or the only people they trust are Jesus, Tucker Carlson, and Donald Trump. That
they're in trouble.
Thing.
Yeah, there's your unholy trinity. There's your unholy trinity. One doesn't exist. One doesn't exist. One shouldn't exist, and the other one can't stop telling lies.
Yep. All right, here we go. Let's get this going. I'll see if I can find that other thing.
I was raised as a Catholic, but I wouldn't really describe myself as religious today. I had never heard of things like megachurches or televangelism or the prosperity gospel. That was until I stumbled across an infamous interview.
How are you? All right, let's see. What is it doing here?
Why'd you pause that kid to cook for an interview?
Vanquishing them from power forever. As you know, crooked Joe Biden and the radical left thugs who have weaponized law enforcement to arrest their leading political opponent. They're leading by a lot, including Obama. I'll tell you what, you take a look at Obama and take a look at some of the things that he's done. This is the same thing. The country is very divided. And we did with Obama. We won an election that everyone said couldn't be won. We beat Hillary Clinton. Now, I used to call her Crooked Hillary. I'd say Crooked Hillary, but I took that name away from her. That was a great day. And we have a man who is totally corrupt.
There's the music.
President in the history of our country who is cognitively impaired, in no condition to lead, and is now in charge of dealing with Russia and possible nuclear war. Just think of it. We would be in World War II.
We would be in World War.
If we're going to be relying on this man, and far more devastating than any war, there will never be a war. If that happens, there will never be a war like this.
And the irony is,
he's lying. He's really admitting that he's saying all these bad things about another person that he's clearly had a history of doing, except for beating Obama, which he didn't do.
Right. Also, his voters will just make excuses for this, but they will try to say that Joe Biden shouldn't be elected for making gaffes that are honestly not this bad, and it shows you the hypocrisy. But
yeah, oh yeah.
But they don't care. It's crazy how excited they are for him. And one of the things we were watching over the weekend that he did was I want to call it with Eat, Pray, Love or something, but it was like vote, pray, something. I don't know, but it was almost an exclusively evangelical event for women. So it was just amazing. Matter of fact, at the end, they did like a big feature like prayer for him. It was just very.
My hope is he kept his hands to himself at the mostly women prayer event.
I highly doubt it, but that would be the thing. I think he's one of those people who buys into what he said. I think he's even, because he even said that shit about stars being able to do whatever they want.
Oh yeah,
in his
just the beginning of history. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he really, I think he genuinely believes that. He genuinely believes he's a star, and he believes this is the privilege of stars. And hey, it's just, you know, this is what you do. All right, so we definitely have a theme, because I think we were talking about mega rich pastors before, and I think this one is it's a different channel, but I think it's about mega churches. So there's probably going to be some overlap, and it's interesting how many people go back to this Kenneth Copeland clip. They go back to this interview he did, because there was so much there, right? The executive, like when I shouldn't say executive, like the executive SUV, the personnel, the way he talks to this woman and puts his finger in her face. I mean, it really epitomizes sort of where we're at with these guys. All right, let's see.
Sir, we'd just like to ask you about why you don't want to fly commercial.
You've got this journalist that is confronting this guy called Kenneth Copeland.
You said that you don't like to fly commercial because you don't want to get into a tube with a bunch of demons. Do you really believe that human beings are demons?
No, I do not. And don't you ever say I did.
Get in a long tube with a bunch of demons.
We wrestle not with flesh and blood, but principalities and powers.
Copeland is being confronted about his purchase of a Gulfstream jet, and it turns out that jet is just one of a fleet of jets that he owns, along with a boathouse, a mansion, and his very own airport. This is a preacher that is supposedly worth hundreds of millions of dollars, with an enormous following.
That is crazy.
And you're telling me that he is just one of many.
So when I talk about Dufresne Ministries, that's Nancy Dufresne here in the front. So these are some. There's definitely some powerful ministers that he's probably talking to here.
With an enormous following, and you're telling me that he is just one of many. This entire thing is a rabbit hole.
Pastor what is now the largest church in America, weekly sermon watched by more than 10 million viewers on television.
The apostles were businessmen. They were rich men, had plenty of money. I'm going to show you that Jesus was a wealthy man, had plenty of money.
One of my chandeliers costs more than most people's house. I got 22 chandeliers in the house.
They're extremely greedy. They don't need mansions. They don't need jets.
God told me to have that plan.
Any religious leader who speaks the word of God, who has more than one suit, while someone has no clothes, is a cop-out.
Yeah, you know, Larry, I just don't see it that way.
For $54 million, I want you to imagine how many people could be fed.
Well,
how many homeless could have places to sleep.
Fresh, plum of all. Fresh.
Are you hearing me?
Televangelism is still thriving in this country. If you were willing to pay the price, you could talk directly to God.
When I remember my own personal experiences inside of a church, what comes to mind was definitely not this.
Hey, everybody, give away everything you have and take all of me.
At times, it's like a concert, and when the preachers come to preach, it's like a celebrity has just taken to the stage. Everyone is worshipping together, they're smiling, they're joined in their faith and devotion. What we're witnessing is something called a megachurch. By definition, a megachurch is just a church that has a larger than average congregation, normally of 2,000 members or above. But when we think of spirituality or forms of it, there's normally a distinction between spiritual duty and materialistic desires. Now, I'm not a theologian and I'm not going to pretend to be one, but even I remember verses from the Bible when it came to wealth and building riches that it wasn't viewed favorably upon. But if my memory is correct, then what was I witnessing in this interview with Copeland, and moreover, some of these preachers? So you've got this preacher, Kenneth Copeland, who founded the Kenneth Copeland Ministries along with his wife, Gloria. They own a $7 million home, a fleet of jets, and their Eagle Mountain International Church has a membership in the thousands, not to mention their television and online broadcasting. Then there's Jesse Duplantis, who sat with Copeland as they both justified their purchases of private jets.
And then the second one I purchased was in January 2004.
Benny Hinn, who claims to be able to perform miracles, who fills up stadiums and broadcasts it on networks worldwide.
I'll release it.
Joel Osteen, a very popular figure, especially in Houston, Texas, where his church resides, who's authored books that have been on New York Times bestsellers, as well as hosting church services with celebrities like Kanye West. Creflo Dollar, who has created fundraisers for his private jets, whose ministry owns 2 Rolls-Royces and expensive real estate to boot.
God is the gateway to the world of wealth.
There's this Instagram page which is called Preachers and Sneakers, and it's literally just preachers next to the cost of the clothing that they are wearing. Something just isn't right. I keep asking myself how. Right? How is it possible to be this braggadocious about your wealth as a preacher and have your followers who not only are okay with it, but help to fund it? And that was when I found out about the prosperity gospel. What we're looking at is a movement.
So one thing I just want to say quickly is, broaden your horizons, right? A mega church, it's a pretty arbitrary cutoff, but let's say, okay, a couple thousand members, or a couple thousand attendees. Many of these churches are, you got to really think about the business they're doing. We talked about this a bit last week. We were talking about the mega rich pastors, but it's, I guess, more focused on their ministries. But they turn a lot of those sanctuaries over, meaning they might do 2 or 3 services a day. Yeah, and they might do them Saturday and Sunday too. The other thing is, though, I was just gonna say, like, we do focus on a particular group of mega rich pastors, and I would just say that those are celebrity pastors. The Creflo Dollars, the Kenneth Copeland, Joel Osteen, TD Jakes. But to me, this is a much larger phenomenon because there's just so many local mega churches that people are not thinking about. And also it tends to just be a bigger problem with churches in general. So even if you go to a church, let's say it's only got 1,000 members or 1,500, they still have this weird thing going on where the pastor is probably in a totally different tax bracket than most of the congregation, and the pastors, by far, wearing different clothes, and the beautiful spouse, and the beautiful home, and the super nice cars. And I remember growing up, even with my grandfather, and by comparison, we're talking about small churches now, but that was still part of the thing. And I remember, my grandfather's not the type of person who you would see as materialistic, or my grandparents wouldn't strike you necessarily as like super materialistic people because they don't talk about it. But that was still just part of like keeping up with the Joneses for ministers, right? To them, it reflected poorly upon their ministry or poorly upon their character if they didn't have these nice things like the other ministers and first ladies did, right? So it does become a bit of just that sort of keeping up with their peer group, and that's their peer group.
Yeah, I like that they're called first ladies.
Oh yeah, that's a big thing.
Found its way inside of America's biggest megachurches and being taught by its biggest preachers. The Word of Faith movement is its name, and its teachings are often referred to as the prosperity gospel.
I think most pastors probably do get out of paying their taxes because of
their clergy,
their commitment, to the church.
Well, hey, wait, now how long have we been doing hot program? Should I be filing my taxes differently? Yeah, I quote the Bible on every show.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely here to tell you this has so far been a genuinely nonprofit, a nonprofit mission.
All we're missing is the paperwork, Pocket Locker. But you know what's going to happen? We fill out the paperwork, and the next thing you know, 2,000 subscribers.
Oh, is that how it goes?
What will we do with it? Well, look, Satan's going to come attempting, saying, all right, you had less than 200 each, and now I'm going to open things up and really corrupt you guys, because that's what Christians would say. Ministers might say about wealth, like, once the money comes, The devil comes corrupting you and trying to drag you away from the church and things
Yeah, I've been
like
trying
that.
to. I've been trying to get canceled to get rich, but maybe I should try to start a ministry instead.
Other than ministry, the best grift going right now is to be a right-wing podcaster talking about how great Donald Trump is and how awful Democrats are. That's the best thing going right now.
But you got to say you've been canceled for it. That helps.
Even if you haven't been,
exactly,
as has been proven time and again, you can say you were canceled while you're on a podcast that has an audience of millions of people, or you can be on television saying you were canceled to an audience of millions of people.
Exactly.
So you don't have to be truthful in order to be successful if that's your goal.
Matter of fact, the truth's probably just inconvenient.
The truth gets in the way of the success of those people. Again, part of I took a psychology course in college. My professor just loved the way I thought, and he says, "You got to keep doing this. You got to keep taking these courses." And I was like, "Nah, I don't really want to," because I had a pretty good understanding of what was going on in people's minds. This sort of thing with like Trump and churches, it always has fascinated me with religion, but with politics now, it's even more so. So what we're seeing, and this is really easy to do. So I don't want to vilify all Republicans, so I'm not. But if you want to do something, and let's say you want to do something nefarious, you convince, like that little snippet of Trump you played, right? You convince people that the other side, what they're doing is wrong. Then you do that very same thing. And what you get is you always had intended to do what you were saying the other side is doing, even if they're not doing it.
Right.
So to your supporters, they will not critically think about what you have done when you did it, because you're just balancing things out. You're just getting back at them for doing it. There's no call for you to be above it, right? There's no call for you to say, okay, it was immoral when they did it, so be it far from me to do it. It's just scoring a victory for your side when you do the nefarious thing you had been saying the other side is doing, right? Trump, lock her up, lock her up. He wanted to lock up Hillary, but he didn't. He says, well, we don't do those sort of things. Now, he did a lot of the things like, deleting records and things like that he said she was guilty of. He's doing those very things. And yet, when you see Trump supporters interviewed, now we don't get to see all of them, right? There may be some who agree that that was wrong, and they don't get a lot of airtime, which is sad, because I think there are probably more of those than we will ever know. But the ones that can't connect the dots, right? Like we see with the audiences for these preachers, I'll connect it to the topic. They're not understanding, or they're not accepting, they're not acting upon the idea that what they're being told with Jesus saying, sell all you have and follow me, store up your treasures in heaven, things like that. When they look at that super wealthy guy on the stage, that doesn't apply to him because he's godly, or God is prospering him anyway because he's godly. When at one point in the Gospels, Jesus sends out his disciples. He says, don't take a script. That's your money bag. Don't take a staff. He's telling them, like, basically, you're going out there with nothing but what I've told you and the clothes on your back, and you're going to succeed. And there are going to be people who won't listen to you, but you're going to succeed. That minister, it's not succeeding in money collection, right? We know in Acts, but it states in there is the people pooled their money together. Communists pooled their money together, and each person had what they needed. Not overabundance of things, but an abundance of things, because Somebody had a lot, somebody had a little, and they just shared. The community just gave them what was needed. So there's a disconnect in the mind that takes place that excuses. We see it in the Catholic Church, right? They have these ministers that assault people, and yet the church is still incredibly strong. Don't think it's not. It's still incredibly strong, and yet from the inside, there isn't enough press, if there's a lot of effort, to find these priests and remove them. And if they're going to go through, have the victims decide what sort of justice they want, along with the court system, we don't hear about that. And I'll challenge Dr. Sean McDowell on this, like, hey, what's the church doing about this stuff? How come you guys aren't arguing back and forth? Where's the debates on this? You're trying to tell me that my disbelief in God is wrong. Meanwhile, there's all sorts of wrong stuff going on within the church. Where's the check for that? You know, where's the challenges for that? Rick Warren, how much time did he spend talking about that? How much time do you spend talking about that? You might have one show every 2 years or something like that. And then it's not like you can't do something about it. The Bible itself says, hold on, let me hold it up. Throw the immoral man out of the synagogue. Throw him out. Get him out of your congregation.
Yeah. So I just looked up. Apparently, ministers do pay taxes, I think. The church doesn't, but I think they get taxes like a self-employed person. But they probably have ways around it. And especially like if they've taken they can take like a vow of poverty and stuff like that. All right, let's go ahead.
They get a parsonage privilege.
Oh yeah, they did say they have special rules, but
yeah, but
maybe
but look, there shouldn't be special rules,
right?
And I think a lot of this is created just so people could get reelected. And believe me, the last 3 weeks, I've really been thinking over running for public office. I've really been thinking it over.
In 2024,
not for president, but for something. Look, I got a job back in Indiana that I'm supposed to do when I get there. So it might be a few years down the line after I get reestablished there, but there's a bunch of community things I want to do that I'm not looking to necessarily make a buck off of. Maybe I will, I don't know. But I want to do some giving back, as they say, because I haven't lived in that community for a long time, over 20 years. So, hi, thank you. Yeah, I want to give something back, and I don't want to have the pressure of having it be my job. But I have an idea of how to approach being a politician, how to approach having constituents and things like that. And my idea may not translate into the day-to-day hard work that a lot of politicians do. It might be easier than I think. It could be much more difficult than I think. But I'm going to talk to some people when I get back there, and
I think
see what they deal with.
I think for most politicians, I think we have an inverse sort of perspective. The higher you go, the more powerful, the more visible. A lot of those politicians are in rare cases, but most politicians are like most people. They're just incredibly hardworking public servants. I remember, fortunate enough to work closely with Cory Booker. I remember when he was the mayor and being in City Hall, and the grind of most people was crazy, right? Most people in public service are overworked and underpaid, and that includes most elected officials. They're just not the ones that get the most airtime. It's more typical to think of a Lauren Boebert who's off vaping and making out at the theater rather than serving her constituents. All right, let's try to get through. Let's try to play some tapes. So
and she did receive a partial medical exam, and she gave one. Just cleaning it up in case your kid's in the
room. God wants you to be prosperous through your finances, your health, your marriage, and relationships. In fact, those are things that belong to you through your faith, if you are willing to receive it. The prosperity gospel often refers to its believers as little gods. The idea being that we were made in the image of God and therefore possess a level of divinity within us that allows us to bring into existence the prosperity that we've been promised.
You are gods, little g. You are gods because you came from God.
And your DNA and Jesus' DNA are exact. You're exactly like it.
It sounds amazing. So how do I earn this prosperity? How do I access this divine power that I supposedly have? Well, it starts with your faith.
But if you'll stay in faith, there will come a point where God will say, enough is enough. It's payback time.
The Bible says, I know you love the Lord. So you qualify for prosperity.
Next, you have the act of tithing. The initial concept of tithing was this idea that you give 1/10 of your wealth in some way, shape, or form to a religious organization. Most houses of worship are going to rely on the donation of their congregation in order to continue their operations.
I grew up tithing, actually. So we had this thing in my school called the missions, and the missions is like a Catholic. It's like a Catholic nonprofit. They do supposedly like charitable stuff, and every other week my homeroom would win the announcement of like which class had given the most to the missions. Sometimes you could have to give to the missions as a punishment, you know, you could donate some pocket change, but I was basically Catholic kids didn't know nothing about that tithing, right? But as an evangelical, come from an evangelical household, we had to tithe. And I didn't want to tithe to my church because, you know, I thought the pastor, like, I wasn't really on board with his vision. Like, he was trying to build a school and build all this stuff. And I was like, I don't think we need to do that. But I still had to tithe. So I would tithe to the mission. So it was so funny. We always won that because I was giving 1/10 of my paycheck to our missions. When I was right, though, because that pastor ended up going to jail for fraud. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Especially megachurches. It is kind of like giving to a charity. But tithing, through the teachings of the prosperity gospel, introduces a, should we call it a plot twist?
Tithing lays the foundation for financial success and abundance.
Tithing is the way for recession or depression to bypass you.
Here, Stephanie from Maryland writes, I sent in my first fruits offering. 2 weeks later, I received, watch this, $2,400.
So now it isn't just about donating
Can you pause
money
it?
to
Can you
a
pause
church.
it?
It becomes a case where
Can you pause it? So there's a proverb, spread your bread upon the waters. This is in the Bible. Spread your bread upon the waters and it will come back to you. I don't know that they're referring to money bread, but maybe they are. This most likely they are. We should be able to see books thicker than this published weekly of people with a story like that, right? 1,300 so pages, but they're not. Just like the people who get their miraculously, they get their miraculous healing. No, there's just not a lot of evidence for this. So the fact that somebody, I'll give you an example from my own life. Okay, this isn't Christianity. This is something else. So I study religions, as I mentioned. So one of the things I would do, I don't do this anymore, is I would go visit different congregations of different religions. Well, I had a neighbor who was in a Buddhist chanting group in Los Angeles, and she said, you should come and you should, you know, check out our group. I'm like, I'm on board. So I go, and there's a musician there, and you can see a documentary about him. I think it's on Netflix. His name is Wayne Shorter. Okay, so I go there and I recognize him, like, holy crap, Wayne Shorter is here. And he and his wife are giving a story about how they had been meditating, you know, and Wayne got for prosperity, right? Wayne got a royalty check. Well, when you're a musician,
you're a famous musician, yeah.
You tend to get royalty checks.
You know?
It's just a matter of course. And by the way, Wayne Shorter, then I think 72, is also where I learned about hair dye. Because I said, Mr. Shorter, why is your hair black at your age? He goes, I use hair dye. So I use hair dye. Not quite 72, but I'm getting there.
So this kind of ties into what I was talking about how much of believers' charitable quote unquote contributions are given to the church. Because number one, I don't consider it really charity, right? I consider it more or less burning the money. I almost think of it as if you're lucky, the charitable contribution will be a tithe of your tithe. What do I mean by that? If you're lucky, the church has this body of people who it's ideally are tithing to it, and other people are giving offerings. If you're lucky, the church breaks off a little bit of that in terms of their charitable work, right? So you give all this money to your church, right? But then, and by the way, I think there's probably should be a term for that. I'm gonna call it like charity washing for now, because I don't know what else to call it. But the idea is like this: like, churches aren't stupid, and I'm willing to bet less than 10% of churches, I'd be willing to bet probably less than 5% of churches actually donate and do charity that would equal their tax burden. They don't. They just don't. Most churches do not do a lot of charity. I think it's totally overblown, the amount of charity people think churches do. They just don't really. I've worked at churches. They just don't do a lot. And what they do, I think, is more about PR and evangelizing than it is, really trying to make the human condition materially better. And I would highly suspect that the churches that do a substantial amount of charity work almost always do so because there's heavy proselytization involved, and they've realized that that's a way to help their numbers grow. But yeah, I just don't think church is doing a lot of charity. And the thing I wanted to sort of tie that to is a lot of these people, not only do I think they're not doing charity work because they're giving their money to a church, but a lot of them are bought into the prosperity gospel. So they're really giving in expectation of a return. And sometimes that could just be pure desperation. They're sick, they're going through hard times, they're giving to God and believing in that giving that seed money is what's going to show their faithfulness and God's going to help them out. But that's just terribly coercive at that point.
I have a question for you and our viewers in the chat. Is it hypocritical for a church to provide health insurance coverage to its employees? I didn't think about that till now. I'm like, wait, that's super hypocritical.
Yeah.
Is it? Pocket Locker, what do you think? What's your take?
Well, first thing is you'd be blown away by the amount of churches that don't. When I worked at a church, I think I was one of the only people there that actually got paid by the church, because that's sort of what I demanded. And I had other forms of employment that took, like I was working at those bartending and stuff like that. And that sort of gave me a little benefits here and there. But most of the people in that church had to raise their support. And so the church wasn't even paying them. And then I'm positive that most of their money that they were able to raise just went to cover their living expense. I mean, they were literally raising money to get by. They weren't investing in a health insurance policy. I also think
it was a smaller outfit. If it's Joel Osteen, if it's
Right now, when you get to a big church like that, I just wanted to mention it because I think it's something worth thinking about. But yeah, certainly I think you get to those bigger levels and those churches are paying benefits for their employees, and I absolutely 100% think they should be. But it's just an irony. I think churches are really exploitive when it comes to employment and economics, and we just don't talk about it a lot because it's not in good favor to talk about. I mean, one of the things that's a perfect example is the worship team. Like, the worship team brings as much in some people's mind, even more than the pastor. Just depends on who you're talking to. A lot of people will tell you, oh, I'm here for the word, and they're so in love with the pastor and his sermon series or whatever. But there's a lot of people who tell you flat out that a big part of why they go to the church they do is the style of worship. After all, that's what you spend about half the service doing. And for me, I remember, like, one, I've had churches almost always underpay musicians, almost always, as a rule. But I've also been exploited in the sense of churches offering and promising to pay me money that I just never got. That happens a lot. But also, like, I do believe in what I call, like, ethical volunteering. Like, I think it's perfectly fine for adults to volunteer, right? It's okay for you to say, I want to volunteer at the Y and be one of the volunteer basketball coaches for the summer league or whatever. They're not going to pay me, but that's okay. Like, I want to provide this service for the community free of charge. And so, like, in the last ministry I was playing at, like, I kind of came to that decision. I had sworn off playing at churches because I've been screwed over financially. I ended up playing at this church, and I was, like, okay with it because everyone else volunteered, and that was, like, clear up front, right? And so I was like, fine, whatever. But I do think it's exploitive, and the way I'll get people to think about that is I practiced a lot every day. I always joke with people say it's fun to be the drummer, it's cool to be the drummer. I says, you got to remember, I'm the drummer for this ministry 7 days a week. Not just on Sunday morning or Thursday night for college or whatever. And I was practicing at least 4 or 5 hours a day, sometimes as much as like 8, for that church. And I would always think, if you just put me on a list, an honest to goodness list about, who puts in what amount of hours to this ministry, there is not a single person putting in the amount of hours that some worship leaders put in that is working for free. Absolutely not. Nobody. The ministers are getting paid. Their secretaries are getting paid. The worship pastors getting paid. Sometimes they're paying a photographer. They might be paying the video person. They're paying the person who did the damn graphics. And you're like, this is crazy. This is crazy. But yeah, there's so much going on in churches that we could be talking about. But this is even happening at a lot of these bigger churches. Some of these churches, Joel Osteen's probably paying his worship team. But a lot of big churches, you'd be amazed how many churches are not. And a lot of them will basically tell you that, like, this is on you. They're giving you a platform. This is your opportunity to serve the Lord. Like, it's deeply baked into their messaging to make you feel like you shouldn't be demanding compensation. Yes.
But look, that's as far as I'm concerned, that's biblical, because they are they're making disciples. They're storing up their treasures in heaven. They're part of a godly community, if you will. I think that's 100% right on board. However, why would you muzzle the ox when it's treading out the grain, right? You're not supposed to do that. So you could approach it from both sides. When I was involved in church, I happily did what I did, except for there were a few minutes of my days when I was in the parking ministry where I dealt with people who really needed to be inside getting that message because they were being crap to me, because I had so much power being in the parking ministry, being able to give some space.
Right. Hey. And that's another allure of churches, right? Is they know how to sell anything as authority and make it feel so meaningful, and then you're into it because seeking elevation socially is a human instinct because it's so tied to our survival and stuff.
Mhm.
All right, let's roll some tape.
Exchanging your money in return for actual prosperity. You'll often hear some of these prosperity preachers refer to it as sowing your seed. The implication is pretty obvious to anyone who is watching. You give us some of your money and in return that value will be given back to you in some way, shape or form. It's the harvest.
I want you to go to the phone or online and sow a seed. Now remember,
Somebody's son is going to be set free from alcohol because of your $1,000 seed.
And I'm going to ask you to sow an exceptional and uncommon seed of $1,000.
And click on that donation button to sow $1,144.
So God is giving you the harvest, and the harvest of the seed you sow. You can't expect a harvest if you don't sow seed, spiritual, physical, or financial.
It's surreal, and it generates a lot of money. On January the 12th of 2008, Kenneth Copeland Ministries took possession of a Gulfstream jet, which was funded all thanks to the donors of his church. In fact, KCM wrote a blog post thanking their followers for helping them, quote, harvest the Gulfstream. But our work is not done. To which the blog then proceeds to remind their followers that they still need $17 million more, which will be used for the quote, sowing towards the construction of a new hangar, upgrading the existing runway, and purchasing special Gulfstream maintenance equipment. Or how about Creflo Dollar's infamous sermon to which he tells his congregation to help him fundraise towards a private jet, all to the response of cheers and applause from the audience.
Can you pause it? Can you pause it? Okay. First of all, Casey and Randy, thank you for your parking ministry comments. So good for me to read. Here's the problem with this. The people that are in the pews, the people sitting at home watching these megachurch pastors and are willing to donate to that goal, are entirely missing the point. The point of what the Bible says to do, the point of the Gospels, right? You would not lift one of these men up. The plane does that, but you would not give the money to them when somebody is starving.
Right.
The money's going to the wrong person. If somebody doesn't have clothes on their back, you shouldn't give Creflo Dollar a dime. And if I ever met the guy, I'd tell him to his face, you should be ashamed of yourself for taking one nickel towards an extravagance like an airplane. We talked about it last week. It's going to cost, if you use that 400 hours, it's over $2 million. Maybe it's 200,000. Screw it. No, it's got to be 2 million because we chartered that jet and it was like 80 grand. So for one trip, almost 80 grand for one trip. So how many people can you feed for that? I would assume he could pay a lot of light bills, medical bills, and other bills with that money and enjoy his life more, arguably, right? Because he legitimately is helping people instead of helping himself to other people's money.
And so churches that are tax-free, I think a lot of them go out of their way and have means of shielding how much money they bring in and probably don't even have to disclose it. I mean, I think that's actually what a lot of the tech shelters for. You're tax exempt, so who the hell cares? You know, who's gonna who's the ultimate source of accountability? There isn't one. I
think they should have to disclose how much money they take into their congregation each week. You tell them each week, because eventually somebody sitting down is going to do what I do,
or at least yearly, so we can figure it out. Do the math.
But often they have a yearly one. But see, I learned this from some friends of mine. We were talking about what things cost. I'm like, that's really not a lot of money. And they said, times 12. This expense I had, I never really thought about how much it cost. And they said times 12. And I went, whoa. So if you're doing, as I did last week, the math on the service, right? They're bringing in I forget what example I used. I said it's $75 per person per week. That megachurch my sister went to. So 75 a week on average times 26,000 people. That's 1,950,000 a week.
Yeah, they're
on
so
average.
yeah. And my thing is just to say what I really want to say is the church business is incredibly profitable. And that's why I don't think they're that charitable, because you don't get uber rich by giving your money away. And I think they would laugh at the thought of giving all away. So I don't think there is a mega church that's actually doing the type of charitable ministry work that we would like to see or find acceptable, because that's not the mega church model. I think they actually have profit margins that would make even the most profitable CEOs blush.
I'm sure. And again, it's people volunteering their money. So yeah, you can get somewhat of a tax deduction for donating to a charitable organization. That's good. Like I said, I donated to Amnesty International for years. Okay, I get a deduction for my whatever I kicked in. So I'll say it again. I say it on practically every episode of Hot Program. God never keeps a dime. Never. Never. Think of the work. I just redid the math. Okay, so $75 on the average tithe per week for 26,000. Actually, this is not fair because I got to remember there's a lot of kids that go to that church. So let me redo my math here. Where's my delete key?
You can cut it in half.
I'm going to cut it right in half. It's pretty good. So 75 times 26,000 is it's not. I'm supposed to do 13,000. 75 times.
You're supposed to just cut
13,000.
the end number in half.
So it's 970. Yeah,
million.
I know, but it's 975,000 times 52. 50,700,000 per year.
Yeah, it's insane. They're like the owners of sports teams or something.
$65 million plane. You cannot
Small
stop
ones,
me.
I guess.
You cannot stop me from dreaming.
See, Copeland and Dollar's pleas for money, they're not met with criticism and backlash from their congregation. It's celebrated. And prosperity preachers will obviously say that this aids in their quest to spread their message across to different countries.
If I flew commercial, I'd have to stop 65% of what I'm doing.
Conveniently, that message obviously allows them to make even more donations. But these preachers, they don't just live lavish, right? They put it on full display.
You think Jesus Christ would roll around in a Rolls Royce?
I think he would. Let's get a close-up of Gloria's ring.
Where am I looking? Right here.
You fly in a private plane.
Yes, I do.
You're staying right now in one of the fanciest hotels in New York City.
Yes, I am.
You wear very
clothes.
nice clothing. So
the wealth of these preachers, they're not seen as gross or
COVID-19.
In fact, they're seen as proof that the teachings work. It's seen as them actually practicing what they preach. The extravagant lifestyle, that's not a mistake or a flaw. It's a feature of the prosperity gospel. Many of these preachers will say that the funds that they received
Pause it, please. I'm so happy he said that. Let's connect some dots. I don't think Jesus was a real guy. If Jesus was a real guy, let's go back to what he just said. It's a feature. The prosperity, right? The bling is a feature. If Jesus is the real deal, people would want to follow him. Some, not all. Not just for the message of the sweetness of the gospel, right? That you can repent and be baptized and get saved. Not just for that, but to gain some of the same abilities that Jesus was purported to have, right? To be able to lay hands on the sick, to be able to multiply loaves and feed the hungry, and so on and so on and so on. If Jesus is a con man, like I believe these preachers often are, selling you a product that they don't even believe in, but doing a very good job of selling you the product, Jesus' ministry could grow just as easily as these guys if he had the internet. And these guys' ministries could grow just as easily if they didn't, right? It would be slower, but they would still grow.
Oh, they were doing this well before the internet, yeah.
Well, but they had radio and TV, but before the megachurches came, right? There was still radio, there was still TV.
Oh yeah,
and
before that they just did tent. They did tent revivals.
They did tent tours, yep.
And yeah.
That's right. Y'all come on down.
Yep. All right.
You know, we're baptizing, folks are saving, but again, why this works so well is not because it's real, not because it's true. It's because it promises something that is real, that is true. People being healed, like, right, I have a bunch of doctors that help me look after myself. People who get healed, that's tangible. But saying it can be done in seconds by somebody doing this and touching you, or touching the hem of someone's garment or someone's cloak or something like that, which is also a garment, that's not real. But the end result is real if that person were to see a physician undergo a treatment of some kind or change whatever behaviors, and voila.
Yeah.
What religion promises in a way is the elimination of the process, right? You are getting the e-ticket, the fast pass to get on the ride of whatever you want: health, prosperity, a spouse, a family, a home, a new car, what have you. Your prayer is your fast pass. You turning in your tithe every week is your fast pass to get you there.
Yeah, absolutely.
For example, says that he doesn't receive any salary from his ministry and all the money he makes comes from his book sales. Look, in some ways, I don't really care if a ministry wants to buy a private jet. It looks optically hypocritical, but I'd rather let theologians argue over the contradictions that those actions have with actual religious texts. I'm more interested in how the money is generated, and it doesn't get more unethical of a promise than it does with the prosperity gospel.
If you're accustomed of giving $10, go to 20. Go up to 70, 80, 100. Raise that amount and watch what God will do, because
don't you stop sowing offerings. Well, they won't let us go to church. Well, email it in there, text give or something. You get that tithe in that church, you get that offering in that church, and then you go home and you do what we're supposed to do.
This idea is no different than the law of attraction and manifestation circles that claim that you can use your mind to manifest any desire that you want. In fact, it's been argued that the prosperity theology does have similar roots to the New Thought philosophy that became popular in America in the 19th century. When I look at Osteen, for example, I don't necessarily see a preacher. I see someone who's more akin to a self-help motivational speaker that uses God as a proxy.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. Look at Oprah.
Take a look, for example, at
I is beautiful, I is kind.
Your Best Life Now, which is filled with all of these kinds of ideas. So here's a quote from the very first chapter, Enlarging Your Vision. It's not God's lack of resources or your lack of talent that prevents you from prospering. Your own wrong thinking can keep you from God's best. And the book is riddled with these similar messages of becoming what you believe and the power of your words. It's a book like many others in the self-help genre. The connection isn't really that hard to see. But it's this sowing your seed message in the prosperity theology, the idea that you can donate to a church and in return you can, pay off your rent, pay off your credit card, that seems particularly stomach-churning. And now this is a message that is being exported from America to Europe and Africa. So one of Nigeria's wealthiest pastors is this guy called David Oyedepo, who is said to be worth $150 million.
Oh my goodness.
We're not asking you to give so the church can be blessed. We're asking you to give so you can be blessed. Some fellow said, okay, I was worth $150 million. I said, that's an insult. $150 million, that's an insult. $150 million, too small. That can't be.
Do they know what they're doing?
Right in
part
their
of me believes
faces.
that Copeland and Dollar, they truly believe their intentions are good. Even for hundreds of millions of dollars, I can't imagine someone knowingly deceive and hurt other people without just driving themselves insane in the long run. That type of cognitive dissonance just seems too much to bear. But at the end of the day, I'm never gonna know what their intentions are. I can only ever see what the consequences of their actions are. And trust me, you haven't seen the worst of it yet.
All right.
Benny Hinn.
Pause
Hinn
it.
is
Pause
probably
it.
most well known for what he
Pause
calls
it.
his.
Pause it. Okay. I don't even know what else this man is gonna say. Benny Hinn and those who promise healing, in my opinion, are the worst of these televangelists, are the worst of these megachurch pastors, because they offer nothing twice. Right? You're not going to get healed by him swinging his coat and hitting you in the face. You're not going to get healed by falling down. And yet, millions of people, and I'm not calling them stupid, millions of hopeful people.
Oh, they're
who are
stupid.
in I can't accept that. Who are in desperate need, right? It's for their sick child, it's for their husband, their wife, their kids, maybe even their puppy dog or what have you that's been beloved to them for a number of years. They've been praying, and now this man has come to town, the music man, if you will, selling a false hope. And hope is one of the most expensive things you could ever buy or sell, as we see, because we critique religion, right?
Yeah.
So we see it. But the people who throw their pills on the stage, the people who stop going to see their doctor, no, doc, I saw Benny Hinn, I'm healed, or someone like him, right? They are the very worst people. And if there is a hell, and I do become management, I'm going to ask for them to be in my sector.
That is, but it also goes back to the Bible. And this is why I say they all believe in faith healing. Every single one of them believes in faith healing.
It's in there.
Because it's in there,
doubt it.
and you get healed by touching the hem of Jesus's garment or whatever. And there are no Christians. Again, there are just certain things that Christians are realizing are not popular, or you're not cool if you say them or whatever, or people talk bad about. But like I said, they're all fundamentalists. They're all evangelical. They're all creationist, right? Because again, the young earth creationist, okay. No, they're all creationists, because none of them are going to sit there and tell you that God didn't create them. And just like that, they're all into this faith healing, because even the ones who don't stop going to the doctors or don't stop taking their medication, if you ask them just straight up, do you believe Jesus can heal you? Yes. Okay. That's it. You genuinely believe you can be healed by faith, but yeah, you're right. It's they are a particularly pernicious brand of scammers.
Miracle crusades. Hinn claims to be able to perform miracles. He'll bring people to the stage with all sorts of illnesses, and then with the touch of his hand, they will feel God's power running through them as they fall back, and these catchers will catch them as they fall.
You had Parkinson's for 15 years. He says, oh, thanks for the anointing. Who are you?
People in the audience will cheer. There are others who are stood there in awe with their hands raised in worship. And Benny Hinn isn't the only one that does this, right? This is a really common practice amongst the prosperity gospel circles.
Glory to God. You're not bound to this chair. The day will come, you'll walk out of it. In the name of Jesus.
What is it that we're really seeing here?
My Lord.
Is this an actual miracle?
See, so for me, somebody like Benny Hinn, he can't suffer enough. To me, somebody like Benny, he can't suffer enough, because he's really leading people down the wrong road.
It just should be a crime if you made $150 million selling snake oil, we put you in prison. And I think the same thing should happen to these guys. It's just that people need the hedge of protection around religion. Oh my goodness, we need to roll tape. We are only 3 minutes into
Preacher
this.
Kenneth Copeland, who founded the Kenneth Copeland Ministries along with his wife, Gloria. They own a $7 million home, a fleet of jets, and their Eagle Mountain International Church has a membership in the thousands, not to mention their television and online broadcasting. Then there's Jesse Duplantis, who sat with Copeland as they both justified their purchases of private jets.
And then the second one I purchased was in January 2004.
Benny Hinn, who claims to be able to perform miracles, who fills up stadiums and broadcasts it on networks worldwide.
I'll release it.
Joel Osteen, a very popular figure, especially in Houston, Texas, where his church resides, who's authored books that have been on New York Times bestsellers, as well as hosting
we must have
church
jumped
services
back.
with celebrities like Kanye West. Creflo
Maybe
Dollar,
you did,
who
yeah.
has
Yeah, I had to
created
jump back.
fundraisers for his private
All right,
jets,
let
whose
me-
ministry owns 2 Rolls Royces and expensive real estate to boot.
God is the gateway to the world of
money and say, look at my life.
Gospel circles.
Glory to God.
And he's worked with his family, sometimes as a catcher himself.
All right, this
in
is
2017,
Costi Hinn. This
Costi
is,
Hinn came forward with
Benny
a
Hinn's
testimony
nephew.
of
His
his
nephew?
time spent in Benny Hinn's ministry.
The responsibility is to look really good, look really blessed, sell the narrative, make all the money, and say, look at my life. If you give to this, if you follow it, if you obey it, and if you do what I say, God will do it for you too.
He described the lifestyle that he had whilst working with his family. We lived in a 10,000 square foot mansion guarded by a private gate, drove 2 Mercedes-Benz vehicles, vacationed in exotic destinations, and shopped at the most expensive stores. Costi Hinn really believed in what he was doing. But he only had doubts when he started finding contradictions in what he was teaching and what he was finding in the Bible. Grace Brulard was 8 years old when she was featured on an episode of CBC's The Fifth Estate in 2005, an episode that was specifically investigating Hinn's ministry.
If you could have a miracle, what would you want it to be?
That I can walk.
Just walk. Is that what you want, Grace? Just to walk?
Just to walk.
Grace's mother brings her daughter to one of Hinn's miracle crusades, and just as she's about to go to the stage, she's intercepted by what are called screeners who tell her to step aside. According to that documentary and an insider, the job of the screeners is to screen out the people that are severely sick and ill. There's the story of Justin Peters, who is an evangelist himself and was born with cerebral palsy. During the Fifth Estate's investigation into Hinn's ministry, they attempt to get Peters to go on stage as well, and just like Grace, he is also intercepted by the screeners.
Our hidden camera shows Justin being stopped by a screener. Watch as Henry Hinn whispers something to her. Then Justin is told to step aside.
In another documentary from 2001, HBO were given full access to Hinn's events and were even allowed to follow several cases of supposed miracle healings. These are people that actually managed to get onto the stage and claim they'd been healed. In one instance, the crew follows a boy called Ashneal and his parents as they are desperate to have their child healed by one of Hinn's miracles.
We're expecting miracle. We're expecting a miracle.
The Prakash family are recent immigrants to America. 10-year-old Ashneal is their younger son. 2 massive brain tumors have reduced him to a vegetative state.
We believe in God, we have faith, and there's nothing impossible for God.
Later in the documentary, Ashneal's parents actually attend the crusade and they're brought on stage to have their child healed by Hinn himself. Hinn gets the crowd to raise
Can you
their
pause
hands
it real
and
quick?
then he places his hands
Can
on
you pause it real
Ashneal's
quick? So, for the Christians listening, we just saw a group of people carry this young man on stage so that he could be healed. Equate that with the people who took the roof off the house so that the infirmed person could be lowered down into the house to get their healing. Right? It's so desperate. This person is such a need that they go to extreme measures. Maybe the crowd outside was too thick. That's the way they got the person there for their healing. That is a demonstration of faith. That is epic. And yet people will tell you, well, your faith is the reason you weren't healed. Right? I already know where this is going.
Yeah.
This little boy is not okay after seeing Benny Hinn. Right?
Yeah. Well, you just
Go
need
ahead
to
and play the
give,
rest of it.
you need to just give more.
Face and says,
expect the miracle. Dear Jesus, the Lord's gonna touch you, young boy.
days after the event, and Ashneal still wasn't healed.
It didn't happen. I was not even discouraged. I know it's God's plan.
You know, I can stake my life on Pastor Benny Hinn's words. And God spoke to me last night at the Colosseum Center where the crusade was going on, and he said, donate him another $2,000. And
another.
Recently, I watched an event from Kenneth Copeland's Eagle Mountain Church, right? It's called Miracles on a Mountain. It's another miracle healing service, and in this instance it was hosted by this evangelist called Billy Burke. And at one point someone is brought out from the crowd, and I thought, hang on, I recognize this guy. It was Big Nick, who, for those of you that don't know, was an ex-member of the popular social media group The Vlog Squad, which is headed by David Dobrik. At the event, Nick tells Billy Burke about his blind eye.
I'm blind in my left eye as well.
I know that, you told me that.
Billy then attempts to cure his eye.
Loosen that!
After all the theatrics, Billy then starts to wiggle his finger around. And then...
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. And Billy hears that, and he continues like trying to help him. And then when he realizes it doesn't work, he then just tells Nick, recite chapters of the Bible every night for your eye to be cured.
So John chapter 9, your confession starting tonight and every
Look at what he did! Look where he's got this guy's face!
Before you go to bed. You ready?
There's no shame! There's no shame! No, he's putting his head in his crotch! There's no shame!
It's like
there's no shame!
Happened. Now, it's been about 7 months since that event took place, and I've looked through Big Nick's social media account, and there's no indication that his eye is healed since the event. So again, what are we witnessing when we see things like this? If we are to believe that these people aren't just actors, which I really don't think that they are, what is actually happening?
Cosplay.
Consider this.
Live action role play.
Oh yeah, definitely.
At best.
100%.
At best.
100%.
What we're seeing is really a miracle. Why don't these people go to hospitals and heal people there? Why do they need the lights and the cameras and the atmosphere and the theatrics to be able to do what they do? In 2011, Darren Brown ran this TV special program called Miracles for Sale. In this special program, Darren Brown, who is this self-described mentalist and illusionist, takes this ordinary individual called Nathan and attempts to turn him into a faith healer performing miracles in front of an audience. The idea behind the program was to expose the fact that what is happening here are not miracles, that it's just a product of psychology, the power of suggestion, and misdirection. Now, some aspects of faith healing are just pure trickery. Right? A good example of this is the infamous leg growing trick. The preacher Todd White is well known for walking around the streets and finding individuals who supposedly have one leg that is shorter than the other. And then miraculously, White will begin to grow out that person's leg right before our very eyes.
Thank you. In Jesus' name. Left leg, I command you grow. Right now, in Jesus' name.
Darren Brown teaches Nathan to do this exact trick because it's not a miracle. The leg growing trick is infamously used by charlatans throughout history. In fact, a quick Google or YouTube search will demonstrate how it can be done in several ways, one of which involves shifting the other person's shoes to make it seem as though a leg is being grown. If you speed up the Todd White clip of him performing this miracle and you just play it back and forth, you can literally see what Todd White is doing. But a big part of faith healing isn't just tricks like this. In fact, a lot of it is rooted in a deeper part of who we are as people. By the end of Darren Brown's special, Nathan is able to perform in front of a small audience of believers, and you can see that he too is able to, with just the touch of his hand, bring people to fall back as though they were touched by God themselves. To understand how Nathan, who is an ordinary guy, versus Benny Hinn, who claims to be able to perform miracles, can do what they're doing, you have to understand the power behind what they're creating in their shows.
Can you pause it? Can you pause it?
It begins. Your
Ball State University, 1990. I attended a university-sponsored event, entertainment. There was a hypnotist, and I'm very interested in that still. And the guy just had people coming up doing wacky stuff like you might think. He said, if anyone would like to learn how to do this, I'll have a brief in the lobby, just stay in the lobby and I'll show you. He goes, it's a lot of fun. You can make a pretty good living out of it. Okay. So I'm one of those people who went. Now, I didn't fall under hypnosis during the show. He tried to mass hypnotize people. Well, he did mass hypnotize people. One of the first things he says, and it was brilliant, he said, if a person doesn't want to be hypnotized, they won't be. So he said a lot of other things, but think of these participants are willing in a way it's not fair to say they know the drill. And you could have a 6-year-old come up there and tap that guy on the forehead and he's going back. Now, an adult with sufficient strength, it's just physics. Those people are standing up there, their eyes are closed, so there's a level of disorientation there. And you just do this to knock them off balance. You can use one finger or two. It does not take much. And they're falling, right? Benny Hinn uses his coat to do it, right? People know what's coming. I took what I learned in that hypnosis introduction, if you will, and I was astonished at how easy it was to hypnotize people. And I was astonished what you could get them to do. I never let anyone get embarrassed by what I was doing. That was really important to me, that they keep their dignity. So you didn't have to cluck like a chicken or anything like that. I really just did like 2 or 3 really simple things. But keep in mind, Christians and non-believers among us, the work's almost done already for you because the people are willing to be subjected, right? They want the healing. They've been pre-programmed, preconditioned by years of hearing your faith has healed you, or it didn't happen for you because you didn't have enough faith. So they show up in a state of full acceptance that it's going to work. We just heard that man whose son didn't get healed. I'm going to send another $2,000 because he believes his money is an extension of his faith.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It's not.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
If you're buying a Range Rover or a Jaguar, your money is an extension of your faith.
It's the same thing with speaking in
If
tongues.
you're buying a Toyota, it's not.
It's just the same thing with the speaking in tongues, right? You see it, you witness it, you develop the expectation over time, and then eventually one day it just hits you, and all of a sudden you're speaking in tongues, and it's really just imitating what you've been conditioned to expect in the church. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Bought a Hyundai, should have bought a Honda.
Already in pain, who feel as though something is. When it begins, you're joined by a crowd of people, united to do what they're doing. You have to understand the power behind what they're creating in their shows. From the very moment it begins, you're joined by a crowd of people, united by a particular cause or belief. There are those in the crowd who are already in pain, who feel as though something is missing in their lives. When they're brought together, there is a sense of oneness, of wholeness, and unity. Just think about how powerful crowds can be and what it's like to be in one, especially when
this is how Trump rallies work too. This is how Trump rallies work too.
This hypnotic, or more specifically, a suggestible and open state.
He wants to heal you because he loves you. You don't have to pay for it. Just ask for it.
The music rises and falls, stirring a wave of experiences and emotions amongst the crowd. Then you begin to create the expectancy for what is about to come.
All things are possible to him that believeth.
You keep the crowd in this heightened, aroused state of mind. And as the crowd is ripened for suggestibility, the faith healer acts almost like a conductor for the orchestra of experiences that people are going through. A leader amongst a crowd of people in a hypnotic, trance-like state is something that you cannot underestimate the psychological effect of. Then the healer begins preaching their message.
But don't look for the healing, look for the healer. Whatsoever you shall ask, that will I do.
The crowd is full of ecstasy. The joy in the audience is a deep feeling as though you're becoming a new person. You're connecting with that of which is above you. You expect that when the preacher lays their hand on you or shouts, "Take it!" you will feel God's touch with it. You've been suggested and primed to believe that that is the case. And in being so connected to the crowd around you, the effects of social conformity are bound to take place. In this trance-like state, you go along with what the preacher's suggestions are. You do what you are expected to do. It's no different to what a stage hypnotist does. You know, the more suggestible you are, the more belief you have, the easier it becomes. And what's even more interesting is that in this heightened state of emotions, of euphoria, of adrenaline, it's very possible to feel symptoms being alleviated. It's possible, even for someone who is in a wheelchair, to momentarily be able to get up and walk around. But what we are really witnessing is just a moment of mind over body. The placebo effect is a well-known phenomenon. It's when a patient's condition changes after receiving a treatment that by no means should have changed their condition. For example, if a patient expects a pill to do something and is told by their doctor that it'll help them, even if that pill is just a sugar pill that doesn't do anything, it is possible for your own brain chemistry to cause effects similar to what medication might have caused. The key word here is expect. Because a placebo effect is mostly theorized to be caused by our expectations around a given treatment, expectations that we derive from culture and society. That's why a placebo that is given as an injection rather than a pill can be more effective. Or when you're given 2 placebo pills to take every day rather than 1, it can also be more effective.
I don't know, Randy. I've been told to stay away from modern day debates. I don't know what to make of that platform. It seems like they get worse and worse.
Culturally, we perceive the latter of these treatments to have a bigger effect on us. That belief and expectancy can be so powerful as to have physiological effects on our body. And what more powerful expectation can somebody have?
I think that was Steph.
The one that invokes their
impressed.
very own belief in a higher spiritual being like God, surrounded by others who share that very belief. What we are seeing is a placebo. This is why you'll never see any miracle healer or somebody that believes in the law of attraction be able to do anything that is beyond a placebo. It's why you'll never see them be able to restore the limb of an amputee.
And as I've watched your healing crusades, am I seeing anything that goes beyond placebo?
I've wondered why sometimes someone comes in and comes out of a wheelchair, he walks around, runs around, and hours later, they're back in that wheelchair again.
The problem is, however, that those who attend the event and whose problems and illnesses are not healed at the event or return after the event start to blame themselves. That for some reason, God didn't want to heal them, that they didn't have enough faith. Remember Ash Neil from the HBO documentary? 7 weeks after attending Hin's miracle crusade,
expect the miracle,
he passed away.
Do you feel in any way that Benny Hinn has let you down?
No. No.
Wow.
Did you ever, in some of your worst moments, think that you must have done something wrong in the eyes of God to deserve this?
Yes. I know there is a generational curse. Maybe it originated from me or from my parents, because that curse lasts for 3 or 4 generations.
Who taught you that?
I hate it.
What a beautiful question.
It doesn't square with the Bible at all.
That
It's
was
a complete
great.
scam. It's utter deception.
increase your faith, increase your seed, and store up for the future, so that when these tragedies hit on earth, you will be spared.
It is a deception to a degree that I don't think I've seen before. And you have to sit there and look at this all and wonder, surely there's justice to this story, right? Surely somebody takes the fall. Surely there's a happy ending to it. Surely.
Nope.
In September of 2019,
no accountability.
Benny Hinn comes out with quite the astonishing announcement.
And I'm sorry to say that prosperity has gone a little crazy. I think it's an offense to the Lord. It's an offense to say, give $1,000. I think it's offense to the Holy Spirit to place a price on the gospel. I'm done with it.
Benny Hinn had decided to leave the prosperity gospel.
No.
Right?
This is marketing.
That I could
it's
give
marketing.
To people is say, watch what they go
He's
back
not in
to.
it for
Watch
the
what they give
money.
up, and watch what they go back to.
Okay, so it's time to give to the Lord's work. It's time to sow seed in the Lord's work.
There you go.
So God can bless you and reward you. Now it's time to give to the Lord's work, because giving guarantees our financial protection.
The problem is, once you've generated the type of following and business and reputation that Hinn has, changing your ways becomes almost impossible. And more so because I genuinely believe that most of these prosperity preachers, they're not intentionally malicious, they've deceived themselves.
Even till today.
Not at all.
Question. Is this God or is this just...
You think they're just lying?
Absolutely. There's no question about it. Absolutely.
So they know this doesn't. Yeah, I'm with you.
So I halfway jokingly say, is it hypocritical of the church to give its members, or not its members, its staff, health insurance, right? Because the gospel is supposed to work. You're supposed to be you follow Christ. End of chapter 16 of the Gospel of Mark. You're supposed to be able to heal people by laying on hands, drink deadly poison without it harming you, right? You're supposed to be able to take up snakes. They can't. They don't have that ability. It is bullcrap. And they know, as they stand up to write, any minister, if you've made it to the level of minister, you should have read the end of the chapter of the end of Mark 16, and you should know you have none of those abilities. You can't do any of that. So to stand up there and tell them the rest is true, you're now a liar. I don't care what you get out of it. You're now a liar. Am I wrong to say that?
I just think
explain it to me.
I just think it extends. I just think it's bigger than that. I just think it extends to the whole organization. I mean, I honestly am starting to think that religion should be outlawed. When they always talk about these ancient cultures that actually tried to suppress the practice of religion. I kind of am starting to admire that effort when I hear it. I mean, I think you have early civilizations that were really realizing that this is detrimental to their people, and that if left unchecked, it'd probably go out of control. And I just think that we're living in you can't mix these things together. Like, when we talk about maybe these guys at the top are con artists or whatever, if we genuinely believe that the average believer who's empowering them, who's giving their money to them, who's trusting them, they're being coerced. There's no other business we would let coerce people like this and make these sort of false promises and let you keep practicing business. And I just think at some point it at least doesn't. I don't think it behooves us as atheists to venerate or protect the practice of religion. And it's probably always going to happen. We probably live in too much of a theocracy, but I just think we should be honest that most of us think these are scam organizations. And fine. I will accept that most of the believers are sincere believers. But that just means they're being conned. And we don't allow con artists to occupy the top tax bracket unopposed. And then a tax-free organization, I mean, it's just legalized grifting at this point.
Me,
The reality is that most of the preachers that we've mentioned in this video are continuing their operations today, and when they pass, there's going to be a wave of new prosperity preachers ready to take their place. The message is an easy one to spread. It promises you health, wealth, and happiness. It makes you feel good, and what's not to love about that, right? Look at the comment section below, and you're probably not going to be hard-pressed to find someone defending Hinn or Copeland or the prosperity theology overall. You'll probably find people claiming that they have seen miracles happen, or that by sowing their seed, prosperity really was given to them. And I'm not delivering any new message here. You know, prosperity theology receives a lot of criticism inside of Christianity and outside.
Hey man, you know you're a piece of shit, right? You know, right? Right?
Yet they'll still get away with it.
He didn't say no. He didn't say no.
Are cynical. It's really difficult to stop their more deceptive actions. The only thing you can do is go to those that believe in it and steer them away. And until that happens, the booming business of prosperity theology and faith healing will continue to flourish.
I don't know what you feel.
And that's the problem. He said, like, until this happens, like, you have to go to the people, intercede, and steer them away from this. And this is the thing. Most of us don't have the audacity to do it. And unfortunately, people want to be deceived. I remember when I really did try to have a heart-to-heart with my mom about this. It was the most disappointing conversation I've ever had in my life. I'll never forget it. You know, she got really defensive, and she just said stuff like, "Oh, well, I've been warned." Like, what do you mean by that? You know, or defiantly when she said, "Oh, well, I don't know what you want me to do. I'm always going to be a Christian." I mean, these people are desperate to hang on to their beliefs, and as long as that's the case, it's going to be hard to do anything about this, which is why I think we do need more of a sort of public mass media critique of religion. It's just time. I just think it's time for us to move on. I think the internet, I think the amount of science we have now, these religious claims, they're just no longer reasonable to believe. And the cults and the denominations themselves have done so much harm that we need to take their power from them. And if that means telling people they were wrong, like, you know, it's just part of being an adult.
Well,
yeah, they get super mad.
As I consider a future in politics, this is something I actually wrestle with. I don't think we should outlaw religion. I'm going to go back to something I said a lot at the beginning of our doing these podcasts, is that religion is useful. It's extremely useful. So knowing that, how does someone like me cast it aside or tell other people to? I can cast it aside, fine. But I can't tell other people that. My fiance, she's a religious woman. She believes in Jesus. She believes in God. We had a chat. How should we raise our kids? That, you know, they're not born yet, but how should we do that? I said, I don't care if they believe in God or not. I'll be happy to take them from synagogue to church to Sangha to whatever the Hindus call their congregation and so on. I'll be happy to introduce them to all of that.
But maybe you should care. And like, I would one, I mean, I think it sounds nice on paper, but this is, I think this stuff is trash. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's good to expose your kids to this idea that they're sinners and that they're gonna burn in hell if they don't love God and honor him the right way. And to be honest, I do get the exposure, like the idea that you expose kids to different things, you know, let them get a flavor of the diversity of the human experience. But if it were me, it would happen a little bit later on, because the truth is kids are very vulnerable. They're very impressionable, and parents don't always have the hold on their kids that they think they do. And so all it takes is on one of those visits, your child meets a cute, boy or girl, whatever they're interested in, and or the preacher really gets to them, or they see a bunch of other kids getting passionate about it. I don't know. And again, I don't think I would outlaw religion. I'm not talking about outlawing it, but I think it should be frowned upon. It should be.
Well, you openly mock it, and I think to some degree, maybe to a lesser degree, I think I do as well. As far as like the kids, I think you make an important point when you say parents don't necessarily have the hold on their children that they think they do. That's a cautionary point, and I'm happy that you made it. But the fact that I can have discourse with my child because I'm not dropping them off, I'm going to. And when they have questions, a lot of religions, a few religions, I can give them some history on and acquaint them with that. And they're going to start asking questions, I would assume. Why are all these people from different walks of life? Why do they believe different things? Or the same thing in different ways? One of the houses I'm looking at making an offer on, possibly making an offer on in the future, it's near a Catholic church and some other kind of church, like walking, and I mean literally throwing a rock and it's landing in the parking lot distance from that house. So those would probably be the first places we go, if they're curious. If they're not curious, there's not much of a yard to play in at that house, so they're going to want to go do something. So
I don't think this is something kids are naturally interested in. That's a good point. I don't think, curious, maybe like I have some classmates, some schoolmates, they go to church every Sunday, they're talking about it. So you're curious as to see what church is like. But I think after you go to church for a couple of Sundays, I don't think there's many kids popping out of bed early Sunday morning, just, oh my goodness, church is the most fun place in the world to be. It's all really interesting. And my hat's off to you. I know there's other people in our community doing it. I think they're more like atheist Christian couples. I think they tend to be married before the atheist deconverts. So they marry when they're both Christians, one deconverts and they decide to stay together. I've gone back on this. I went through a long period where I just said, I'm not even going to date Christians. I mean, it's like, a lot of women have in their dating profile, if you're a Trump supporter, swipe left. They're just letting you know right away, that's a deal breaker. I'm never going to match with you if you're a Trump supporter. I'm kind of the same way, where if I saw you were a Christian or you had a God reference in your profile, it was just an immediate swipe left. I really became close friends with a Christian. I talk about her sometimes. I really, was definitely willing to kind of set that rule aside for her. But the way that situation did not work out, and it did not work out explicitly because of us not being able to get on the same page with regard to faith. I mean, it's a really huge difference, right? We just did a show on purity culture. She was really about that purity culture, never been kissed, saving everything for when she gets married, and didn't see herself with an atheist, couldn't acknowledge her feelings for an atheist, stuff like that. It just gets really hard. And I think for me, it hurts too much. I mean, I sometimes wish I never brought any of this stuff up with my family, because there's really just no way for us to go back to the way things were. They're religious fundamentalists. They're obsessed with their religion. This is their addiction.
It's their identity to some degree.
It's their identity. Oh no, it's definitely their identity. They would tell you it's their identity. And one, it hurts too much to see them deceived and sort of auto-deceptive this way. Two, I don't think they're, believe it or not, holding on to your faith, I think at some point becomes not in good faith. Like, I don't think they're acting in good faith anymore. I just, and then the other thing is it hurts personally, It hurts to know so much about something or be so passionate about something and be in a relationship with somebody who that doesn't move. An example I could give you is if I said to my family, you shouldn't buy Tyson chicken. Why shouldn't we buy Tyson chicken? Oh, I worked at KFC. I could tell you that, Tyson chicken is low quality and they treat their animals far below the, market standard or whatever. It's just, you should buy any other type of chicken. My family would never purchase a Tyson chicken product the rest of their lives. And actually, just quickly, that's not true. Actually, I worked at KFC. Tyson chicken, as far as I know, is about as good as you're going to get. It's like buying your chicken from the grocery store. KFC uses the same chicken. But no, seriously, if I told them, don't buy this umbrella because this company does something bad, they would never buy that umbrella. In other words, you have a ton of credibility with the people in your life. A lot of y'all are not going to buy an Asus laptop ever. Why? Because know when something goes wrong with that laptop, my one black friend is going to be like, I told you, no matter what you do not buy an Asus laptop.
It's garbage.
I got one upstairs that like practically melted on me. It looks like it was in a damn fire.
Depending on the door, it's not even a good doorstop.
Right. And so it's kind of hard for me, for somebody to know I'm an atheist, know I deconverted, maybe even know that this is something I'm passionate about, I make content about. And then that doesn't move your faith at all. Like that doesn't cause you to question or to challenge anything. You're not reconsidering, it's very tough. It's very much, it's just difficult. Like it's like you have this impact in the world, but you don't even feel like you have that influence in your own home. Yes, I just haven't figured out how to reconcile that.
It is a personal relationship with Jesus. It is a personal relationship with God. So just like nobody comes between your mother's relationship with you, nobody comes between, not even you, her relationship with God. Her interactions with you are external to that. Right? She's accountable to you as a mother and as someone you love, and she's accountable to God as a faithful servant.
Yeah, and that's no longer
in return. Yeah. In return, God is supposed to deliver the promise.
Right.
Right? Shame you don't know that it didn't work until you're dead.
Right. Yep. Yeah, and that's the problem too. And I feel like those two things don't really serve each other. Like I don't feel like you can, because I think you'll make some sacrifices. There will come a time, and I think when the rubber meets the road, my family to me has put God before the family, well before the family. Even financially,
put him first.
If we took the amount of money our family spent in tithes and just put it in a family fund, we would have all of our surgeries and healthcare needs taken care of. We'd have a college fund that would probably collect enough interest that we could fund sending all the kids to college and all that type of stuff. And to me, I blame my family's religiosity for our complete inability to generate generational wealth or even think about generational wealth. It's just a rabbit hole that's very deep for me, and it's tough because you grow. I'm still growing, still learning, but yeah, the older I get, the further I get away from religion and the mindset I used to have, the more damage I see it doing. And I even this thing, like, some people, I don't know, it feels a bit condescending to me to be like, those poor people who need Jesus more than me, right? But it's just weird. Like I think most of us, for the most part, I think we do better teaching people to cope, right? And I think we would have all benefited from that. I would have benefited from learning about sex rather than dealing with purity culture. I would have benefited from learning how to grieve rather than pretending I'm going to see the person when I die too. I would have done better, learning how to really serve people and serve my community rather than going to a worship service and dropping money in the bin and assuming that I was making the world a better place. I just think that religion robs us of so much. That to me, it's like the abusive parent or the abusive partner who may be good in bed, maybe a decent provider, maybe a great youth soccer coach. None of that changes the fact that they're an abuser and you should leave them.
Right.
But
Right.
it's hard to, because those emotional ties are there and those benefits are there. And it's hard to walk away from those things, even if we can do better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't
I
need it, but
think
they do. Yeah, it's tough.
I think what you just said is something that other non-believers can say when being encouraged to follow a faith practice. For a time I did, and I wish I would have learned this instead of this. Because the fact is, there are things in these holy books that are extremely useful, and there are things that aren't. Unless you're the guy telling the whole congregation that they should believe it, and when you ask for money, they put it in the basket.
But how different is that from like a Jordan Peterson book? Right? Like, I think Jordan Peterson's a whack job, and most of his stuff is nonsense, right? But he's written self-help books that a lot of people found useful, and it does have wisdom in there. Work hard, be honest, tie your shoes, make your bed, show up to work on time, whatever. Like, we could say there's a lot of good things there, but is it enough good things that you would turn around and say, well, therefore we need Jordan Peterson, right? And I would say most of us would say no, because
Most of human history didn't have a Jordan Peterson.
You're right. And then I think the level of wisdom he brings or whatever is sort of like substandard. It's like not that hard to find from other sources. But what do you think about compatibility? Like, because I really do wonder about that. I've always, like I said, I go back and forth. I like the sound of, me and a Christian could be together. I just don't see it happening. And to make it clear, it's mostly rejection on their side. It's mostly, me knowing when the rubber meets the road, they're going to demand to have somebody religious or spend the entire relationship kind of working on me or praying or hoping that I'll come around. Like, but I do worry about the practicals, certainly.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
I worked with some Macedonians, and they were a lot of fun. This guy Nick taught me this expression, yebby yaddy, which is like whatever, dude. Like, so you need to learn yebby yaddy relationship, a way of going through it. So in any relationship, Pocket Locker, there is an essentiality to each person being able to have the freedom and the comfort of being themselves. So if a person does have a faith practice and they routinely go to a service, you have to understand that that's the way they spend their time when they're not with you, and accept it. And if you want to give them a gift and it's maybe related to their faith, that's what you do. Like, they want some special edition Bible from, like, I got one from 1868, I think it is. They want something like that. You can afford it. Okay, go ahead and get it for them, because you are saying yes. There's a principle when I was doing improv. Improv lives on this principle, that the principle of yes and if we are on stage and it's just you and I, and there's 75 people in the audience, we've just walked up from the back of the stage, and we're the two that are clearly pulling the focus of the audience. And I look at you and I say, I want you to crush those children into potato sack race today. You can't suddenly change it to a Formula One race in cars in Monaco. There is a potato sack race. Evidently, I seem to think the stakes are pretty high because I want you to crush those other kids in the potato sack race. You have a choice. You could respond as an adult would, like in a very adult voice, your speaking voice, or you can make a voice like a child. Your response provides context to what we are showing the audience. A relationship is much the same. That person's faith practice provides context to their life. When you enter their life, you provide another context. You're there to be the loving partner, right?
Yeah.
That's what you do. You're not there to make it about religion. That's a different topic. If you just wanted to have discussions about religion and you wanted to say whatever about religion, right? Well, we'll see you next week, Pocket Locker, for a hot program. You can do it, but not with them. You sort of have to give them that. I'm reminded of that line in Jesus Christ Superstar, why take their toy away?
Mm.
And that's in reference to religion. Why take their toy away? So relationships
it's a dangerous toy, like firecrackers.
But if that's but look, if you sold firecrackers and you didn't bother shooting them off, is that dangerous? Is the guy at the gas station who has a wall of cigarettes behind him but doesn't smoke, but he's selling 600 packs of cigarettes every week, are they harming him? No, he's just the peddler. He doesn't smoke. He lets other people smoke. And the people take the cigarettes and then walk out of the store.
But that's kind of what I feel like people are doing with their religion, right? Like they're ignoring the harms and the dangers that come to other people because it makes them feel good or it gives them a sense of hope, meaning, and purpose. So they'll look the other way with what other people are doing with the brand.
Pocket Locker, you are a marijuana advocate. There are people, drug dealers, right, killing each other over territory, over money, and things like that. So in that respect, marijuana medically do zero harm to you, but there's somebody out there that it's harming. For this woman that will come into your life, let's say, and that you will fall in love with, the religion may do zero harm to you and your relationship with her. You have to find somebody.
It might. I don't.
If she's gonna go ahead.
I see the. I just don't know if I can get there anymore. I think I just might be in a. I really think it's. I don't think it. I don't know. I guess I'd have to believe when I see it, but I've currently just gone back to it. It just won't work. It won't, because I think I'm too adamantly anti-religion, right?
Then there's two ways it could work. Find somebody whose religion is so ridiculous that you can't stop hearing about it. Because there's bound to be one out there like, I can't believe you.
Sure.
What else? When it becomes that, where you just have so much fun learning about it, like, she's going to teach our kids this stuff. At least I'll have a wonderful time hearing about it. But you could do that. Or you could just say exclusively, I don't think I'm made for a religious person for the following reasons. And you can also say, okay, Sumami is saying, but religion can divide two people in an intimate relationship. That's true. And I think, Sumami, you would agree, even people of the same religion who just disagree on doctrine. I mean, that's all it takes, right? So that's true, Pocket Locker. There's the world is becoming less religious. This nation is becoming less religious. So you can say that works to your advantage. I don't know how long you want to wait though. You generally you generally find the right person. Look, dude, I met my fiance in my late 40s. You know, I've never been married. I don't have kids. You know, I've been a late bloomer my entire life. Not really, but since 11, I've been a late bloomer.
Right.
Before that, I was not. So you have to realize if what you want is peace and harmony and love and cohesiveness and joy, right? There's some YouTuber or no, a guy on Instagram, he commented about his car that he had fixed up. He invested in joy. And I was like, that's what more people need to do. Invest in joy. So I could say the same thing to you. Instead of one of my other favorite quotes which is change their minds. Nah, don't go in a relationship with a religious woman hoping she won't be religious anymore. Don't do that. Find one that is like a find a lukewarm Christian that is just, well, I don't have to go to church to be a Christian. There's your woman right there.
Yeah,
Because she already is a low investment.
Yeah.
Who
No,
if there was one, spat out long ago.
I actually, I'm more now. I'm just like, I just don't think it would ever work. I don't think it would ever work.
Maybe
but I
not.
do. I'm curious as to people that do it, and maybe that's a topic for a day. And try to get a panel of people together who are in relationships with Christians and talk about how all that works.
I'll do it.
It's interesting.
My fiance, you'll never get her on here. You'll never. She already told me she's not coming on, but she'll support me. If I need a drink of water, she'll go grab me a drink of water.
Cameron said he couldn't do it.
Cameron couldn't do it with a believer?
Yeah, I think for a lot of us, it's just there's too much trauma. It's a source of like too much family trauma, probably.
Well, if that's true, the last thing you need is that.
Yeah.
If there's
for
somebody, I'm sorry, my battery says it's going flat. If there's somebody who is bringing you down in any way, and they constantly bring you down, you don't need that at all. There's nothing you need from that person other for them to exit your life. That's what you need from them.
For sure.
But you're talking about someone to journey through life with and have fun and be in love and maybe make some babies and have adventures and leave an impact on the world that is positive. You certainly don't need somebody who's bringing you down or is going to look at you and tell you you're going to hell. A long time ago, we talked about something like this, and I told you there's that scripture that the wife's faith justifies the husband, and the husband's faith justifies the wife, like in reference to one of them being a non-believer.
Oh, yeah.
So there, believe me, with the Bible, it's got a catch-all for everything.
That's a good. That's a good belief to go on. I think that would have to be, something that they can take confidence in. I think if they have confidence in that, then they might be able to get along with you better than if they buy into the whole unequally yoked thing.
Yeah, well, look, this same book that says you should not be unequally yoked has talking donkeys, has a talking donkey, right? Donkeys don't talk. It has a talking bush. That doesn't happen either. It has a talking snake. Even at the beginning, that loosens you up. Like, oh, this is going to be fun. It's true. It's not supposed to be true. But I guess the proper approach to it, any relationship, is you're looking for someone to love and enjoy. I'll make a recommendation for you. Go to a cosplay convention.
Oh yeah, I'm about that.
And meet someone there, because those people, they have picked there's a lore, right? A show or a book series or something that they think this is pretty great, and they like it so much that they dress themselves up to be like that, if only for a little while, right? And think of all the hours they put into the costuming. A lot of them, some of those women might spend 2 hours making their makeup just right and putting words in and stuff like that, just to really look the part. And then they show up, they walk around with other people doing the same thing, and they feel that sense of validation for what they've done, and maybe they get some compliments and stuff like that. Find one of those women, because a woman like that, she takes the fun side of herself seriously. And she will also take the fun side of you, Pocket Locker, seriously. The relationship won't be, if she's religious, the relationship won't be about religion. I don't think. I don't
absolutely.
think. So I've met people who do cosplay, and they seem like generally fun, outgoing people who aren't very judgmental.
No, they're usually pretty cool. All right, let's go ahead and wrap this up. We're almost done.
Prosperity gospel, the health, wealth, and prosperity gospel. But I'll tell you what I feel about it. Hatred. It is not the gospel. And it's being exported from this country to Africa and Asia, selling a bill of goods to the poorest of the poor. Believe this message: your pigs won't die, your wife won't have miscarriages, you have rings on your fingers and coats on your back. That's coming out of America. The people that ought to be giving our money and our time and our...
John Piper is just one of the many preachers and ministries that actively try and combat the prosperity gospel. And although Texas is home to some of the biggest megachurches, it's also home to the Trinity Foundation, a leading watchdog ministry founded by Ole Anthony that carries out investigations into some of the conducts of the biggest televangelists.
It was Ole Anthony, founder of the East Dallas homeless ministry Trinity Foundation, who masterminded the investigation and helped expose some of the top televangelists in the country.
You know, faith and religion are powerful things. Seeing the sense of hope that it can fill a person with, or the community and the purpose that it can inspire towards good causes. Now, I don't think anyone can look at those things on their own and say they're bad. A few months ago, I had burnt out from working. And when that happened, I felt very cynical about everything that I was doing. You know, what was the point? And what helped was having a sense of hope that those feelings would come to pass, and finding purpose in what I was doing, and spending time with my friends and family. Hope, purpose, and community. But hope, purpose, and community can be exploited. It can cloud your better judgment just because somebody dresses the part or sounds the part and invokes the word God. If you're somebody watching this that is a believer in the prosperity gospel, I invite you to think over and really question, could I be wrong? A healthy skepticism, I think, only motivates someone to find the truth, not drift further away from it. Seek, and perhaps you will find. If you think the world of prosperity preachers and mega churches is crazy, then my friends, you have to check out my documentary on New Age gurus. It should be shown somewhere on the screen. That is arguably where all of this kind of began to form and originate, and it is just a whole other rabbit hole in and of itself. But either way, my friends, it is great to be back. As always, hand to head.
Maybe we'll check that one out later. All right, gang. Yeah, that was really well done, really well produced.
Excuse me. I'm just looking at the chat. Sorry, folks. The last couple of weeks, I'm using my phone, so it's harder to follow the chat, unlike when I'm on a computer. But whatever. It's an Asus computer, ASUS. And if it wasn't a year old, I'd say I should get something else. But I think I might pull one of my other Lenovo's out of the mothballs. I don't use that thing except for works. And that's it.
I'm with you. This is Denise. Yeah, I'm with you. I feel you on that. I think I've seen John Piper now. It's so interesting because I think I see him as like an apologist, and I've probably made fun of his stuff because he's still a religious minister. But yeah, it's good that he's critiquing the gospel of prosperity, and it is a thing that a lot of Christians are opposed to. Oh, you're upside down.
Even the clock stopped.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to your video. Yeah, you just flipped around, right?
Where did everybody go?
Is everybody missing? I don't know what happened to my one black friend. Why does this thing always get wonky at the end? Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Yeah, I don't know what's going on with this tabs. Oh man. All right, he might have to refresh.
Come on, phone.
But I don't know if he sees I don't think he sees the private chat either. So all right, gang, that's gonna do it for us this week. We made it through. I'm gonna go ahead so I get to my 6 o'clock meeting on time. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. This was a super fun episode. Yeah, we could hear him. I don't think he could hear us. So I'm gonna go ahead. If he comes back, I'll wrap up with him. But thank y'all so much for tuning in. As always, be good to yourselves and each other. We'll be hanging out and gather the rest of the day. There's a link in the description. Come link up with the gang at the Bundy Ranch. There's also links to our channels down below. Subscribe to Pocket Locker 86 channel, my One Black Friends channel. Otherwise,